It began as a joke. At least, that's what Lena told herself. The box was nondescript, brown cardboard weathered with a few scuffs and smudges, its edges softened like it had been passed through too many hands. It sat on the desk under the halo of her recording light, surrounded by unopened fan mail, postcards, books, coffee mugs with grim slogans like "Dead Serious." The last package of the night, her grand finale. "All right, folks, let's see what we got here," Lena said, her voice pitched in mock anticipation. Her podcast audience loved these unboxings, a ritual she'd started to connect with her growing true crime fan base. She adjusted her mic, grinning for the live chat viewers. The red live indicator glowed softly on her camera. Knife in hand, she made a show of cutting the tape. If this is edible, it better not be another glitter-laden cookie. If it's something creepy, well... She paused dramatically, the tape snapping open with a crisp sound. "Then I expect bonus views." Inside, nestled in shredded newspaper, was a doll. Lena's smile faltered, not because she saw a doll, but because of this doll. She recognized it instantly, everyone would. Annabelle. A wave of laughter split the unease. "Oh, come on, you guys are too much." She lifted the doll into the light, the crackled glaze of its porcelain face catching the shadows like old skin. Its button eyes seemed to roll downward beneath gleaming painted lashes. A flush of red on its cheeks, chaotic strands of yarn hair, and a grin that wasn't stitched so much as forced, stretching a moment too far on either side. Lena tilted the doll, pretending to inspect it as her live chat pinged with messages. "Hell no, put it back." "Annabelle, who sent that? Burn it, just burn it." "It's just a replica," Lena muttered to herself, fishing out a note tucked beneath the doll. Thin, with fraying black ink barely legible in the dim overhead light, it simply read, "She watches, she chooses." Her grin froze for the camera. "Okay, well, nightmare fuel received. This is going straight on the shelf. Congrats, Annie, you just made the True Crime Hall of Fame." Setting Annabelle propped on her hands and knees, Lena placed her on the center of her bookshelf, where she joined her collection of creepy oddities. Antique murder mystery novels, crime scene kitsch, and police report manuals. She signed off the stream 20 minutes later and closed her laptop with a satisfied sigh. But the room had grown colder. Lena shook it off as a forgotten draft, pulled her cardigan tighter, and scanned for Shadow, her cat. He was usually perched near the desk by now, two golden eyes glowing lazily from the dark corners. But the room was still. Shadow. Dinner. She rattled the can in her hand, waiting for the usual creak of lazy paws hitting the floor. Silence. Weird. Her footsteps sounded louder than usual as she padded into the darkened hallway. Every light she flicked on seemed to tint the place yellow, brittle and faint, not quite banishing the night huddled in the corners. She found Shadow near the bookshelf, his fur a bristling map of fear. He was crouched low, tail puffed into a plume, back arched, green eyes fixed on the shelf where Annabelle sat, motionless. The sight unnerved Lena more than she wanted to admit. She crouched to his level, running a hand over his back. He hissed in response. "Hey, okay, sorry, geez, don't need to freak out." Her hand froze mid-pet. Shadow wasn't looking at the doll. He was looking past it. She turned to follow his gaze, but saw only the dim corner behind the bookshelf. Nothing. No shadowed intruder. No lurking reflections. Just nothing. "Relax, buddy. It's just a doll." Still, Shadow bolted the second she moved away. He vanished toward her bedroom, claws scratching against the hard floor, and didn't return for the rest of the night. The first sound woke her at 3:21 a.m. Lena stirred in bed, pulling her blankets tighter against an October draft, snaking through her apartment. An hour ago, she'd fallen asleep to a podcast playing low on her phone, but now the room was eerily silent. No hum from the fridge down the hall, No gentle purring from the foot of her bed, where shadow normally curled. Instead, there was faint shuffling, a dry scrape like paper sliding over wood. Lena froze, heart thudding. Had she left a window open? Her apartment was on the second floor. Nobody could break in without it sounding like a wrecking ball. She sat up in bed, her eyes darting to the corner of the room. Nothing. Her phone screen lit dimly as she slid it from under her pillow. But just as she pressed the flashlight button, the apartment groaned, a low, building croak of floorboards under strain. Then came the laughter. A soft giggle rolled through the walls, spreading from no discernible location, as if the seams of her apartment itself had started whispering. It was high-pitched and broken, pausing to suck up air before squeaking again. Childish. The flashlight beam landed on the shelf in the living room. It was narrow but focused, piercing through the doorway. The doll wasn't there. The space where it had sat was empty. Lena didn't think she'd screamed, though her throat burned like she had. Somewhere between the sound of giggling and the empty spot on her bookshelf, her pulse had skyrocketed, pounding hard in her ears as she barely dared to breathe. Somehow, though, the flashlight on her phone remained steady as her shaking hand aimed it toward the open living room. The doll wasn't in her line of sight, but every part of her body screamed to stay in bed. "Okay," Lena whispered, her voice a raspy crack against the silence. "Raccoon." A raccoon somehow got in and moved the doll? That happens, right? Sure, why not? She hated how ridiculous it sounded as soon as the words left her mouth. Taking slow, deliberate breaths, she forced herself to slip out of bed. The wood beneath her feet was ice cold, chilling her through the thin socks she'd collapsed into earlier that night. She stepped gingerly across the room, glancing over her shoulder with every step toward the living room, where the shadows seemed thicker now. When the faint light of her phone bounced against the couch, she stopped, and then the flashlight illuminated the coffee table. Sitting dead center on the surface, legs dangling like an obedient child, was Annabelle. She was no longer on all fours as she had been displayed on the shelf. Instead, her arms hung loosely at her sides, head tilted at an impossible angle to the left, as though it had been twisted or broken. And her mouth, it was different. It wasn't subtle either. Her porcelain lips, originally painted into a coy smile, had been warped, stretched unnaturally into a wide, jagged grin that hadn't been there before. One corner of that new mouth jutted higher than the other, as though something inside her face had shifted the clay outward from within. Lena clutched her phone so tightly that a tremor of fear shot up her arm. "Nope," she muttered, her voice trembling. "Not tonight." She grabbed the doll, cringing at its cold weight as it sagged in her hands, and stormed toward the closet. The end, or just the beginning,